Arsenal have dropped points in the Premier League once more after another controversial refereeing decision. Yesterday's game against Everton was a 1-1 draw in the lunchtime kickoff, and this is the Arsenal Unfiltered Match Review Podcast. Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. I hope wherever you are well and you're not still as frustrated as I am with the result from yesterday. Just another strange game in a strange season and a very, very strange refereeing call. We will start by talking about the penalty, and we're also going to talk about the lineup and what this kind of means looking forward for the Real Madrid game. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one today. I'm not going to do the full kind of blow by blow of the game. I wasn't able to watch the first half live. I watched the second half live and watched the first half this morning. So it doesn't feel quite right to do the blow by blow of the game, especially when you've heard it all before. It's a low block team. It's a kind of dominant performance from Arsenal that we couldn't turn into enough goals to win the game. Of course, technically we did. It was 1.79 XG for Arsenal against, I believe, 1.09. Yeah, 1.09 for Everton. Of course, the models vary. But, without the penalty, that's a 0.3. Just doing my maths. 0.3 XG for Everton. So, they had 5 shots, including the penalty. It was pretty dominant from Arsenal in terms of everything but the penalty. And that is where I'm going to start this morning. I think there's multiple different things you've got to look at in the penalty. Let's just go through it as it was. So Jordan Pickford literally just hoofs the ball forward. I'm going to watch it now as I describe it to you. He hoofs the ball forward as Everton had kind of built their game plan on, right? They were trying to get the ball into our half very, very quickly. Now, I think it's Jakub Kiwior underneath it. He lets this ball bounce, and I don't hate that decision because I think it looks like the kind of scenario that Mars Lewis-Skelly and David Raya are going to clean up between them. I think he doesn't really understand how close Jack Harrison is. Obviously, in hindsight, I prefer him to go and win that header. Don't let it bounce. It's Sunday League 101 that. So I think that's a kind of a little block mark on us here. Little block mark on Jakub Kiwior's performance. But from there, actually, is there a super amount of threat? Excluding Harrison, there's 2 Everton defenders to 2 Everton attackers to 4 Arsenal defenders. So even if Harrison wins this ball, you'd expect us to deal with the cross. David Raya is in a decent enough position that if Harrison had got the first touch on it, he could have come and swept out. So it's not like Kiwior made it 100% the wrong decision. It's just a small error from me. And then there's a coming together between Mars Lewis-Skelly and Jack Harrison. So I'm going to try and pause on where the contact's initiated. So it's a good 5 yards, 5-6 yards outside of the penalty area where the contact's initiated. Harrison initiates the contact. Then these two are kind of grappling together. Mars Lewis-Skelly goes down, and then Jack Harrison goes down. And I think crucially, Jack Harrison looks to play on, doesn't even get up and appeal. None of the Everton players are appealing, and I always think that's quite a sign. If none of the players are appealing, obviously the crowd go up. The crowd always go up, but when the players don't appeal, it's interesting for me. It's always a key sign that they don't think it is. Now, there is an angle of this, which is the one that frustrates me the most. The one that I think is really clear, and one where I'm amazed VAR don't intervene on this, and that is the reverse angle. So from kind of the match cam view, and then the view where you're kind of facing both Harrison and Mars Lewis-Skelly, you can see the contact. So it's clear there is contact, but my first kind of frustration with it is when you go to the reverse angle, which VAR have and should be able to look at and should be able to show Darren England if they want, you can quite clearly see the very forceful pull back from Jack Harrison on Mars Lewis-Skelly. So Both of them are competing for the ball. Their arms are across both of each other. And Harrison pulls Lewis Skelly just straight back behind him. And I've freezed it on a frame here where Lewis Skelly is on the floor. Jack Harrison has just pulled him down, okay? And Jack Harrison is still, he's basically in possession of the ball at this point because he has fouled Lewis Skelly. He's pulled him over. Then, of course, yes, there's contact from that point. Absolutely, there's contact from that point. You can't argue that Lewis Skelly being pulled down, landing on Jack Harrison's feet, causes Jack Harrison to go down. So this isn't a dive, okay? And we're not saying that this shouldn't have been a penalty because the contact's soft or there's no contact. But what I am saying is that there wouldn't be the penalty initiating contact, the forceful contact, if Jack Harrison doesn't pull him over. And honestly, I'm replaying this angle over and over right now. It's not like we're just having a little grapple. He's pulled him right down. So that's frustration number one, and that for me is plenty of reason not to give it. Frustration number two is that this contact starts way outside the box. So they first kind of come together, maybe 5 or 6 yards out, like I say, and then Lewis Skelly's arm comes across Jack Harrison, maybe 3-4 yards outside. So if you're giving it for Lewis Skelly kind of initiating a foul with his arm or something like that, which I think is the only thing that you could give it for, noting that Jack Harrison has yanked him over onto his back leg, it's not in the penalty area. So it's a bizarre sequence of events, and I always have a touch of sympathy for referees when things happen at pace and they're like this sort of incident where it's kind of a tangling or a coming together. We had it in the Brighton game. Do you remember the penalty that Brighton got off William Saliba, where both, I think it's Saliba and João Pedro, went to head the ball, and Saliba does get a touch on it. Now, I have sympathy for the referee in that scenario because actually those things have happened so quickly. In a pre-VAR era, it would have been one of those ones where you go, well, you understand why he gave it. He's seen this. And you might review it and go, maybe it's not the right decision, but he's seen this, and this is what we can give it on, or why he's given it, even if it's not correct. In VAR era, both this Brighton penalty and this penalty against Everton, I don't understand how these are given. I really don't. Jack Harrison, I think from everything I've seen of him when he was at Leeds and now at Everton, he seems like a nice guy, but he's clearly not cheated, but he has initiated this. He's gone to get this penalty by pulling Lewis Skelly over, and then he thinks, I'm not going to get to this ball, or actually I'm not in the best position, and he kind of leaves his leg there or pulls him over as to get that kind of contact. I'm not sure, but that should be seen by VAR. Is my point, I guess. And the Saliba contact on the ball against Brighton should have been seen against VAR by VAR. So it's one of those where I just cannot understand how in this era, with so many camera angles, this is given. I can't. And I know there will be people out there going, well, okay, whatever. It's Everton. It's the season's kind of over in the Premier League. Who cares? Let's look at head to Real Madrid. But I can't separate myself from results like that easily. And I will come on to this with the lineup. I thought the lineup was very strange. This is a game where we could have gathered momentum. We need to be treating every game like a must-win. And going out there to win these games, yes, there is a world where we start a full-strength 11 and one of them goes and gets injured and everyone's going, well, why didn't he rotate? But we rotated in this game, and I don't think we gave ourselves enough kind of capacity for one of these ridiculous moments to happen. And again, there's the argument, well, we shouldn't have to need, if we score one goal and the other team don't get any change out of us apart from a ridiculous penalty, we shouldn't need to be in this position where we need to score 2 goals. We've done our job, we've played our way, and the referees brought them back into the game. But I think we should have learned by now from this season that we need to go strong enough to make sure that incidents like this and incidents like the Brighton one don't ruin our game, because I think this is a game, like I say, where we should have been gathering momentum. Now we go into the Real Madrid tie with a little bit of a sour taste in our mouth, a little bit of a bad vibe, and I do want to just comment on Miles Lewis-Skelly because he's being reffed in a incredible way for me. I mean, you look at the Wolves red card, you look at this penalty here, you just look at certain things that have happened to him. The reaction when he celebrated against Manchester City, and I just think people are looking to put this guy back in his box, and that's all I can think of. That is all I can think of as to why this penalty stood, that they are looking to put Miles Lewis-Skelly back in his box. Because the guy threatened to show some personality. And I'm really struggling with it at the moment, because I'm telling you, if that's the other way, if that is an Everton player, if that's James Tarkowski, by the way, who nearly broke Alex McAllister's leg last week and nothing was done. He got a yellow card. There was no upgrade by VAR. There was no retrospective ban by the PGMOL. Things we've seen in the past, by the way. If that was James Tarkowski doing that, that's not a penalty. They're not giving that as a penalty. They are looking at that in a minute detail on the VAR screens and going, well, the Arsenal players pulled him over into it. So, I just think they're looking for ways to put Miles Lewis-Skelly back in his box, or looking for ways to, maybe an unconscious bias to the smaller teams. I feel like the referees are trying to even up games, make sure things are interesting, trying to control the narrative. I really don't know, but I don't see how VAR can look at that action from Jack Harrison and go, yeah, we're not doing anything with that. I find it bizarre. I find it absolutely bizarre. And for balance, I would say the exact same thing about the James Tarkowski red card against Liverpool last week. They're looking at the smaller team. They're looking at James Tarkowski with an incredibly dangerous tackle. Alex McAllister his career could be over, because he's not a young guy. He's not recovering from that injury fully, right? So he's really threatened the safety of a player in the Premier League, and VAR have had the opportunity to look at it. And they've gone, we're going to leave him on the pitch. Now, the only way that can be understood is they're going, right, okay, well, he's seriously endangered opponent. You can see Alex McAllister's leg bending, so there's clearly plenty of force. But, we're gonna leave it because we don't feel the game needs that red card right now. And the Wolves one, Miles Lewis-Skelly, was that dangerous? Was it not? Well, he's tripped him, but we could probably get away with giving a red here and evening up this game and I don't know, making more of a product of the Premier League, whatever it is. But I certainly feel like there is a mandate from the PGMOL or the refs or something to kind of, maybe it's just unconscious bias, I don't know, to really make sure that everything is evened up and everyone's given a chance. I think it's probably more unconscious bias, right? I'm not here starting conspiracy theories, but that unconscious bias is not being managed. Not being managed at all. You can think of tons of examples. I'm trying to think of non-Arsenal examples to sound rational and reasonable. The Tarkowski one last week is an absolute clear as day one. Absolutely clear as day. So I'm very frustrated by this. Very, very frustrated. Of course, we were already 1-up. It's a good finish from Leandro Trossard. Leandro Trossard, who started in a very, very rotated lineup. And that's what I'm going to come on to next. Thank you for kind of bearing with me on my refereeing rant. I guess to sum up, it's never a penalty for multiple reasons. Initially, Kivior could do better, but the contact starts outside the box. Harrison pulls Lewis-Skelly over, and I just think that VAR are looking for ways to keep things even and interesting, whether it's unconscious bias or not. That's how I think they are currently reffing games, to make sure that things are interesting for the kind of the narrative that's going on. Yeah, let's go on to the lineup then. So obviously David Raya in goal. We saw Ben White return at right back, William Saliba, Jakub Kivior and Miles Lewis-Skelly. We knew those three were going to play. We knew that was going to happen. There was doubts at right back. Arteta in his pre-match conference had said, White or Timber might be available. No commitment really, but we got 61 minutes out of Ben White, and then obviously 30 minutes out of Urian Timber. So really, really positive for both of them ahead of Real Madrid. I wonder if that gives us enough to go Timber, White, Saliba, Miles, Lewis, Skelly against Real Madrid. I just wonder if that's an option. Then the rotation started heavily, didn't it? So Declan Rice kept his place. Jorginho was at 6, and Mikel Merino was playing in the other 8 spot alongside Declan Rice. Although at times it was like a Rice-Jorginho double pivot, so it kind of mixed around a little bit. No Martin Odegaard in the midfield, and no Bukayo Saka or Gabriel Martinelli up front. Ethan Nwaneri started on the right wing, Leandro Trossard through the middle, and Sterling down the left. On the bench, we had Partey, we had Saka, Martinelli, Timber, Odegaard. I mean, that is a strong bench. Throw in Zinchenko and Tierney into that as well. A really interesting rotated lineup, and I think it showed where Mikel Arteta's head was at. So, for as much as I'm complaining about the refereeing decision, I think, we probably only just did enough to win this game. And I don't think our performance was amazing. I don't think it was bad. It was just kind of a bit nothing, really. It was a good finish from Leandro Trossard. I think there were some nice moments from Ben White going down the right-hand side. It was quite a commanding performance from William Saliba, I thought. But otherwise, putting Jorginho, Sterling, Nwaneri in, no slight on those guys, especially Nwaneri, because he's done a fantastic job for us this season. No slight on them at all. But you could tell that Mikel Arteta was protecting his main men for the upcoming Real Madrid game, and that was certainly on his mind. Of course, Saka and Martinelli got half, Martin Odegaard got 20 minutes, and Timber got half an hour. So there has been, some minutes managed. But for me, I said it on the preview pod, I thought Mikel Arteta would go stronger than this, and I certainly would have gone stronger than this. I wanted to see Merino start up front. I'm still not convinced about Trossard in the middle areas of the pitch. I much prefer him arriving there from the left wing to finish instead of kind of occupying that spot, because I don't think it allows us to go long. I don't think it gives us as many options in build-up play. So I do prefer Mikel Merino or Kai Havertz up there when we have him available. So I think that was a strange one. Obviously Sterling, he got an assist, but it was a pretty simple assist. One of his better Premier League performances, though. I don't want to just bash him for no reason. One of his better ones, but still, I just don't think he had enough to get past O'Brien and Tarkowski. And we saw when Martinelli came on, he caused them a lot more issues, had a good chance later in the second half. So, yeah, it was a lot of rotation. It is probably more rotation than I would have liked. But like I say, it's gearing up for the Real Madrid game. In terms of Everton, I've complained about the refereeing decisions, but I want to give Everton their flowers as well. Most of the time, we are facing low blocks, and I'm not saying Everton didn't set up in a defensive way, but I certainly think, having watched them yesterday and this morning, of course, as I caught up with them, David Moyes has really improved this team, really improved them. They're much more kind of willing to burst forward. They have much more kind of attacking intent, and when they get the ball, there is an element of, we can pass here, we can move this about and create another crossing opportunity for ourselves. That was their main route of attack, of course. They were trying to cross the ball and get Beto onto it, and maybe get Decore running onto it late, but it didn't quite work for them. But I think they did show a bit more intent. It really doesn't come across in the stats, to be honest. Only 5 shots. Only 130 accurate passes. They went long a lot, but only made 37% of those accurate. But 19 touches in our box is not bad for a team that you kind of expect are going to come and be a bit more defensive than I thought Everton were. So I want to give them their flowers. I don't think they deserved a draw because of the lack of chances they created and the fact that most of their XG came from that penalty, which I've already said shouldn't have been a penalty, but I think they certainly showed an intent and an effort. Okay, so to sum up the first half, never a penalty in my eyes. A lot of rotation from Mikel Arteta ahead of Real Madrid, and well done to Everton for coming and playing a little bit more than some of the other teams. I'm going to have a short break, and when I come back, I'm going to talk about what this kind of sets us up for Real Madrid, and then I'm going to do stars and underpars. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're like me, you finished watching an Arsenal game and you're already looking for the next bit of Arsenal coverage you can find. If that sounds like you, follow or subscribe to Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast app of choice right now to make sure you don't miss a single episode from me. I'm here 3 times a week, reviewing matches and covering Arsenal news, and I'm so excited to have you all here as well. Thank you very much. Welcome back to this match review episode of Arsenal Unfiltered. We're reviewing Arsenal 1, Everton 1. And I just want to look forward a little bit to the Real Madrid tie. That is obviously Tuesday night. And like I mentioned when we discussed the lineup, we've had a lot of rotation now. So White's got another 60 minutes under his belt. Partey has had the day off, basically. Obviously, he travelled and stuff like that, but he did not go onto the pitch. Bukayo Saka, 45 minutes to add to his 25 the other day. Gabriel Martinelli, fully fit, really, but rested and given a half. Yuri Timber recovered after his injury/collision in our previous match, so he got half an hour. Martin Odegaard only 20 minutes. Do I think that was the right choice? I don't. I think it underplayed the importance of this Everton game and the importance of us having momentum and good feeling going into it. You know, just for the fact, like, we're going to be discussing that penalty thing. We're going to be discussing how we attacked a little bit more. You know, that's what my preview is probably going to be about now. Like, if we can't cause Everton enough trouble, how are we going to cause Real Madrid enough trouble? It's a really difficult one to picture now, whereas I think if we'd gone out a bit stronger, got the game won, you know, had Saka on the pitch and been two up at half-time rather than one, or you know, just be able to recover to a 3-1 position after the penalty, something like that. I would much prefer that scenario, and then we're taking them off after 55, 60 minutes to rest them that way, than this position where, okay, great, we've managed the minutes, but I'm not exactly coming into the Real Madrid game on a high. That, you know, saying, oh, okay, well, our players haven't played many minutes, doesn't fill me with, you know, oh, that's brilliant. Saka I can understand because he's just coming back from that big injury, but I wonder if Martin Odegaard and Martinelli could have played from the start here. I do think that was probably a misstep from Mikel Arteta. I don't mind the Partey-Jorginho switch, but I think Marino should have started up top. We definitely should have had Odegaard in midfield, and then probably, you know, Nwaneri and Martinelli off the right. I can see that. Nwaneri off the right, Martinelli off the left. I can see that being a much more kind of tolerable way of doing this for me. And I guess looking ahead to Real Madrid, my main worry is maybe kind of that left-hand side of our defence. Again, it's never a penalty, but that was their one real kind of, well, not their one real moment of danger. They also had the cross from that side as well, didn't they? Which they inexplicably kind of, they didn't even get it on target. I don't think the shot even went towards goal. It sort of just hit the Everton player and went away from the goal. So, you know, that came from that side. They're going to have Rodrigo, I think, out on that side for Real Madrid, unless he's injured. I did see that Real Madrid have just lost to Valencia. Now, that is the first time in many, many, many years that Real Madrid have lost to Valencia. And it was a very late goal. Yeah, 90 plus 5. Hugo Duro scores a goal. And I believe Real Madrid missed a penalty in that game as well. So quite incredible. So, you know, that from that side of things, it's good for us. They've dropped a bit of momentum. They didn't have Rodrigo in this game. They had Brahim Diaz playing on that side. I'm just going to check the subs. Rodrigo did come on. So they'll probably have Rodrigo over there on that side attacking Lewis Skelly and Kivior. And if Everton are causing trouble down that side with Jack Harrison getting, you know, Kivior let it bounce, like I said, and then Lewis Skelly got in a bit of a tussle. If they're getting big crosses in, what's Rodrigo going to do to that side? And that's not to blame either Jakub Kivior or Miles Lewis Skelly. Miles Lewis Skelly is literally a teenager still, so we've got to remember that. And Kivior is not, you know, he wasn't signed to play in Champions League quarterfinals against Real Madrid, bless him. So there's a lot going on there, and I will feel for them when they have to come up against Rodrigo. And probably I would imagine Bellingham will pull out to that side, and if they play Valverde, he will pull out to that side. Of course, they'll play Valverde. It's where they'll play Valverde, whether it's in central midfield or right back. They're the two kind of positions he's moved between this year. So look, it's going to be an interesting one. They've got problems of their own, the Real Madrid team, but I just don't think the Everton game has set us up in the best way going into that tie. Right, stars and under pars. Let's do this before we close. So I have 3 stars in this game, one of which I think you're going to be surprised about because I've already criticised him a little bit on this podcast. And let's start with that man. It's Jakub Kiwior. He shouldn't have let the ball bounce for the penalty. As I've watched it over the recording of this podcast and spoken more and more about it, he shouldn't have let the ball bounce. So that's the blot on his performance for me. But let's give him flowers for everything else he did. I thought he passed the ball really well. He had 94% accurate passes. He actually created a chance, which is pretty decent. He somehow had 2 touches in the opposition box. And, I think he had a really good game. There was a really crucial block in the first half from an Everton shot. And I think he was just very solid. Passed the ball well, all of that's jazz. And for me, he put in the kind of performance where all of our eyes were on him yesterday. Everyone was looking and going, oh, how are you going to do here? How is this going to go? And it went pretty well. And I'm not saying that means he's going to be a stick against Kylian Mbappe, of course not. But I think it will have kind of it was the kind of performance he needed just to make sure that the fans were a little bit more assured about him for this Real Madrid tie. So yeah, fair play to Jakub Kiwior. I think he did some nice stuff. The next one, again, we're staying in defence. William Saliba. I thought he was really good. He had one of those games which was him saying, you know what, yes, Gabriel's not here, but don't worry, I'm still here. And I'm going to prove to you that I can run this back four, run this team from my position all on my own. There was a couple of moments where he was, attacking. I think they came after set pieces, but he was like in the opposition box. He put a cross in at one point, didn't he? I'm just trying to find the attacking stats for him. It was It was like really, really decent from him in a on the ball standpoint. Yeah, 3 touches in the opposition box, 3 passes into the final third. 67% of his long balls were accurate. Very, very efficient with the ball. 96% accurate passes, and then for me, he was just imperious defensively again. 8 duels won, 1 lost. He won 100% of his ground duels and 75% of his aerial duels. There's just no change out of William Saliba, and I don't think this has been his best season by any shape or form, but he still has games like this. And you remember, he's looking after a back 4 there, where Ben White has not started a game in months and months. He's got Kiwior to the left of him, who, you've lost your partner in Gabriel. You've lost your kind of security blanket for if Saliba gets it wrong, Gabriel's going to deal with it. And it was a performance where Marcelo Skelly as well, an 18-year-old. It was a performance where he said, don't worry, I'm going to wrap these guys in cotton wool and look after them. And like I say, without the penalty, Everton created 0.3 XG, so he did his job. And then my final star for the stars and under pars section, is going to be Ben White. So 3 of the back 4 are my stars for this game. And the reason I'm giving it to Ben White, wasn't perfect in this game. Couple of moments where I think he was not caught out defensively, but probably could have done better. But think back to that first, maybe first minute, second minute, and we saw him stride round the outside of Ethan Nwaneri. I don't think it was Ethan who gave him the ball in the end, but he picks up the ball and provides an early cross, and Sterling, the commentators said he should do better, like steer it round him. I thought that was a bit harsh. Sterling did okay. He got a decent strike away, and there was just tons of Everton players in the way. And immediately I was reminded of, okay, this is what Ben White gives you. Timber's great. Timber's so defensively efficient, and he's decent going forward. But Ben White going forward is so good. He is so athletic, so good at getting up and down the pitch. I just think he is so good, and it was so nice to see him back in an Arsenal shirt. I'm not sure who is going to own that right back slot going forward. Because Jurrien Timber has been fantastic, but yesterday, just in his 60 minutes, White reminded me of why we love him, why he is so integral to Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard having good seasons. It's the running that he does for those guys and the overlaps that he does, and his speed and his stamina to get up and down that line, just so impressive. My under par is not a player this week. So I only have one under par, and I'm not giving it to a player because I don't think anyone was especially bad. If I was to give it to someone on the pitch, it would be Jorginho, because I think the game just sort of passed him by a little bit from what I saw. But, I looked around and I thought, well, like I say, I've given 3 of the back 4 a star. David Raya was okay, distributed the ball well. Declan Rice, I thought, pressed well at points. And then the front 3, Wanyeri, difficult to give him an under par in this game. It's one of those where he needs to figure out a way to make an impact when he's not scoring or assisting, but he's 18 years old and he's finding his feet, and this is always a very difficult away game, so I'm not going to give him an under par for his performance. Sterling got an assist, Trossard got a goal, very good finish. It's difficult to give anyone on the pitch really an under par. For me, the under par is Mikel Arteta. I love Mikel Arteta, but I just think he got it wrong. I've said this a couple of times in this podcast. I think Odegaard at least should have started. Probably Odegaard and Martinelli. If Saka was fit enough to start, I would have started him. So yeah, maybe Partey as well. I think it would have been better to get the game won and then take people off. We ended up chasing the game. Maybe we exerted more chasing the game than we would have done having just gone out there with a really strong team and dealt with it. But yeah, that's it's not Mikel's finest day, I don't think. And of course, I have to say that with a big asterisk. If that penalty's not given, which I don't think it should have been, we're looking at this as a 1-0 win and we're going tidy. Everyone's been rotated and we've got 3 points. We could have sat back and watched the Nottingham Forest Villa game yesterday afternoon without any jeopardy. Of course, that did go our way in the end with Villa winning that match. So very, very helpful. Thank you, Aston Villa. So actually, we have gained 1 point over Nottingham Forest in the race for second. So that's helpful. So look, I'm acknowledging that the margins are small, I guess is my point. Without the penalty, that should never have been a penalty. I think Mikel Arteta's had a really good game, but in hindsight, I think I would have liked to see 1 or 2 more first 11 players start. I'm just going to quickly go back to the penalty. I think I got a little bit excited. I really don't mean that PGMOL are kind of steering a direction to level up the playing field, level up the matches. I think it's probably more unconscious bias from these referees. Or you don't want to send off the player of the littler team because it's just that kind of human nature of supporting the underdog, right? In these games, and I go back to the Liverpool game for that example. Don't send off the Everton player because they're the not smaller team, but the underdog in this equation. And in this scenario yesterday in our game with Everton, it's sort of like, okay, I don't even think it's a 50-50 call, but when you look at it with VAR, but from a referee's point of view, you might be going, that's kind of 50-50, I'll give it. VAR then obviously should overturn it, but they don't. So yeah, not trying to say there's any sort of mandate or kind of idea there from PGMOL, but I certainly think there's probably some sort of human nature thing going on, unconscious bias towards the underdog, where that's not being coached out and the referees aren't dealing with that very well. Like I say, it's never a penalty, but I just wanted to clarify my thoughts on that because I'm really not one for conspiracy theories. I really don't like that kind of angle, but I do think there's got to be something going on more than just kind of clear incompetence because VAR was supposed to fix all of that. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, a disappointing day. I think we should have won the game for multiple reasons, because we should have started stronger, because there shouldn't have been a penalty. There were positives. I loved watching Ben White back in the Arsenal shirt, but overall for me, a bit of a disappointment. I think we need to be putting more into these games and valuing them, valuing them a lot. Okay, Real Madrid next. 1-1 draw with Everton, and then you have to entertain Real Madrid. It's not a perfect preparation, but we will be playing Real Madrid on Tuesday night. I'll do a preview pod for that tomorrow morning or maybe tomorrow afternoon, not 100% certain, but it will be out on Monday for you all to listen to. And then, of course, on Wednesday, you'll get the review podcast of that Real Madrid game. Hopefully that Wednesday podcast will be very, very, very positive. I would imagine that is going to be a very exciting game, and it is the biggest game that Arsenal will have had at the Emirates for a very, very long time. So let's hope we can enjoy it. Like I said in the middle, if you've enjoyed this episode or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, please consider going to wherever you get your podcast from, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and searching Arsenal Unfiltered, or maybe even just seeing them in your feed because it's popped up for you, and going and finding the follow button and clicking follow. That means that every time you open your app, you will get notified when I have released a new episode, which is 3 times a week at the moment, and we're doing a really big effort to keep it 3 times a week. And of course, if you're feeling super generous, a review would be absolutely magnificent. Go and find the review page wherever you get your podcast from and drop a 5-star review. That really, really helps me grow Arsenal Unfiltered and keep bringing the content 3 times a week. For now, all that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.